How we doing tonight, guys?
Doing well. How are you?
Yeah, we got the original crew back. Well, kind of. We were supposed to have the original crew, and then Donnie called out sick. But we said we'll pick up the slack. Don't worry, we'll find enough side topics. We'll definitely. I think Donnie was very excited because I am definitely committed to doing a best ball, especially with underdog being legal in Michigan now. If DraftKings doesn't offer some good contests and a lot of variety, well, we'll at least have underdog to rely on as well.
Underdog's better for best ball anyway.
They are better for best ball anyway.
I'm a DraftKings guy. I'm going to play on DraftKings, but the underdog contests for best ball are better.
Yeah, and I don't ever want to be beholden to DraftKings either, in the sense that we have to. I want to go to where the platforms are the best. In fact, because I know me and you do a lot more golf, there's talks because Pat Mayo went over there. They might be doing some more like season long leagues type, one and done type selections on a weekly basis. So I might get invested in that and do some content around that because I just think that's a fun concept. I know they have been experimenting with different. We talked about it last week a bit with the different game theories and different ways you can kind of bet and have fun with like office pools and even Evans talked about different dynasty leagues and different settings and just different ways to engage the sports mindset. And so I'm always up for trying new things as well. Evan, you brought some interesting topics at the end of the week, just about some headlines that might have changed, like best ball rankings, or even like I know you've done a lot of like mock drafts, for example. I'm going to pull that up now, but like to some of this late breaking NFL news, it's kind of interesting to watch. Like I know you brought up Dak Prescott, for example. You can get into that if you want. But
Yeah,
how have you seen that, like, in fact, just change like how people are drafting, or just like how you think about drafting?
yeah. I mean, I guess I can tie the two in together, being that this is a new dynasty league I joined. Shout out to the football guys for this listener league. I'm happy to be a part of this. We just actually finished this tonight, like roughly half an hour before this show aired, which I'm pretty happy about. At least I get to show off how the rest of this team did. But just to cover a few things, as best ball season is upon us, and Dak Prescott is already a quarterback that slept on a lot when it comes to being taken seriously as a top 10 quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured the CD Lamb drafters are probably going to go after Dak anyway, just for that Dallas stack. But if you all have been paying attention this past week, as of 2 days ago, Juan Carlos Vasquez on Twitter at El Narado, or my Spanish is awful. I can't pronounce that. Took a good picture of Dak Prescott in a air compressed walking boot for his right ankle. Dak was seen as not seen. He was seen wearing that, but he was also quoted as saying that it was a precautionary move. So right now, this is not bringing upon much as far as panic goes for Prescott shareholders. Nobody's expecting him to have to sit out of preseason games or regular season at this time. So I'm wondering, I'm sure you guys have seen that headline as well. What do you guys have to say about that?
Go ahead, go, because I think mine will be a little shocking. I don't want to.
I honestly don't give a crap. But
I'm even more. I'm even more positive.
I've seen the picture, and like if you just see a dude with a weird boot, and you know it's like that medical walking boot, and he's just walking down a dock on like I don't know. I want to not care and just say it's gonna be okay. I want to not care and say it's gonna be fine.
Yeah, which I think is a fair, measured kind of.
In the back of my mind, I don't like Dallas as much this year.
Yeah. Well,
but I don't know if I can actualize that in any way other than look, walking boots.
I got it because we did draft CD Lamb. CD Lamb is going in the top 5, presumably, of all drafts. I mean,
but I also think like even if they put Trey Lance in there, Trey Lance knows get this motherfucker the ball.
See, that's kind of my thing. I thought like, well, if Trey Lance,
Cooper Rush definitely knows get this son Mitch the ball.
Truly, I think
I'm not as worried about CD Lamb with this Dak news as I am about Dak, Ferguson, some of the other receivers. Like, I think Lamb and the running game are probably the two safest things. Ram, Rico, Zeke. Those are the safest things with this news, honestly.
No, Evan, you're a dynasty guy, so you deep dive. So like this take will probably resonate with you too. Is I think Dallas has some of the deepest quarterback room of anyone in the league. Govs
Really?
kind of stole my thunder there. Cooper Rush is still there. I think he's probably like he's capable as a like 1 or 2 week backup. A lot better than somebody's number two. But also, I kind of smiled and was like, you know what? As a person who has some CD Lamb stakes, who was a believer in Dak Prescott, he would have been on our team had that misclick not happened with my mouse. So I'm perfectly fine saying I think Dak's going to be okay here. But even still, as a fan, I'm like, you know what? Even like seeing a guy at this point that you want to believe in a walking boot, maybe it is just an extra layer of protection. Um, if I'm gonna have an injury or someone trying to protect their leg and basically wearing extra covering at this point, I think it's a good thing. Maybe it means he plays less preseason games, which I kind of am. I'm a favor anyways because I'm just one of those guys that thinks once you've reached a certain level of veteran presence, you don't really need preseason and you're just risking an injury anyways. So if they're already in that precautionary stage, that means that he can't get hurt for week one and he'll definitely be ready. So I think of it as a positive, actually.
Have either of you ever worn the same or a similar walking boot that Dak was wearing in that picture?
I've
I've,
seen people wear a walking boot like that. I've never worn one myself. No.
yeah, I've worn really advanced kind of
Yes,
braces.
I've been around people who have needed that. Yes.
Yeah,
And
I've never.
you've worn just different braces, Logan?
Yeah, I've worn like more advanced braces because of my disability. Even whenever you have a disability and you're young, the physical therapist is going to try different things. I mean, it sounds bad, but literally they're going to treat you kind of like a guinea pig in some ways.
Yeah, like my brother, same way. Like my brother has braces for his feet, but they're
Right.
like molded to his feet to like
Right.
give him stability. They're not sort of the same thing as this walking boot that's trying to keep his foot in a specific position. Like it's almost like a cast that's
Right.
trying to keep his foot in a specific position, but allow him to walk a little bit.
Now, funny enough, they never stuck for me because they kept trying different ones, and then they realized, oh yeah, this is actually hindering your mobility, and so I actually ended up not using them. But like my point is, I've experimented with a lot of different types, and I think there is something to that Dak Prescott thing too. It's like I think some people hear walking boot or they see like, oh, he's restricted or he has a medical assistance, but a lot of that stuff is actually good and protective and like more of a shield than it is like for sure an injury.
Yeah, the reason I ask you guys for that too is because I have worn a similar one before when I was 14. I was playing intramural basketball in 8th grade. I turn around for a jump shot, and all of a sudden I feel a pop in my right foot. And I knew something was wrong, get an x-ray the next morning, and it's a stress fracture. Really tiny one in my third metatarsal. So I started off in a cast, and then I had to wear like a black version of that boot for like roughly a week, maybe 2 weeks until it healed. And I had to miss most of track and field season until like the last 2 weeks. That's just how long the doctors didn't clear me. But that's obviously different than what Dak is going through here. So that's also a part of with the sprain. Sprains can linger, but it just sounds like they're getting it early. Where I'd be very surprised if he was still having this problem by next month.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know. I'm always encouraged whenever a medical staff is like it's better to be advanced in the idea of like we're ready, we're prepared, we're going to be precautionary than it is to be like, oh yeah, we tried something and we accidentally shot Tyrod Taylor with an extra shot to the heart, and now Justin Herbert has to start this game because our medical staff is incapable. So, and we've seen that sounds like a joke, but we've literally seen an NFL medical staff do that. So, yeah. I think it's a good sign.
Yeah. Well, in any case, yeah, I'm not that worried about it, and that's also why I'm glad I got Dak here in this Superflex Dynasty League here as my second quarterback. More than happy to have him. I know a lot of people love to pass on him. I mean, there were people who took Jaden Jaden Daniels, Justin Herbert, and even Jordan Love over Dak Prescott, which, I mean, I get it. It's a dino league. You're looking for your long-term guys, but it's like, nah, man, give me Dak. I mean, I know he's still getting up there. I mean, I think he's 30 at this point, but he's still got some good years in him left.
Evan, so is there any other news that you saw this week or in the recent weeks that like affects dynasty drafts or like really you think might impact like a best ball league? Any kind of nuggets, any kind of encouragement? Because I do think like this is the time where that kind of news is relevant. Like this is kind of your time to shine.
Yeah. The other only thing I wanted to bring up too, for the sake of the show, is that Josh Jacobs has been reported as going to take on more of an Aaron Jones role. He's hoping to get more targets in the passing game, which would heavily increase his overall fantasy football value if he can get the Aaron Jones replacement role. Because behind him is A.J. Dillon, their new rookie. I'm forgetting his name offhand. I'm sure it'll come to me, but
no, you don't even. It doesn't even need to come to you.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I feel like he'll get the Aaron Jones role, and the Aaron Jones role was when he's hot. AJ Dillon doesn't exist.
Yeah, and they drafted Marshawn Lloyd, who I would expect to replace AJ Dillon at some point.
Yeah, it is Marshawn Lloyd.
But Josh Jacobs, as far as I'm concerned, there's nobody behind him. There'll be a change of pace guy like a Marshawn Lloyd, and maybe Dillon will still get a few carries. But I've said this before: AJ Dillon fucking sucks. I still think Josh Jacobs still has enough in him to have a bounce back season.
I'm gonna be buying high on Josh Jacobs this year.
Yeah. I do have an interesting question off of that topic because I do think the Packers are a perfect example to bring this up because I've heard a lot of it in the best ball streets of like strategy and like how to dissect news like this. When it comes to handcuffing running backs, are you guys more likely to handcuff a player that you already have on your team? So, for example, we drafted Derrick Henry. Are you then looking at the Ravens' backup options and trying to draft like a Mitchell or someone like that? Or are you saying like, no, if Henry gets hurt, I need another running back from another team to fill that position? Like if Henry gets hurt, my team is definitely hurt by that. So just having his replacement only adds kind of the same value. Where it's like if you can predict an injury on a different team, then you're multiplying your value. So where do you guys come in on the handcuff discussion? I don't know if I described that perfectly. So if you guys want to re-examine a better way to say that, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, you could go first with this one, Gov.
I'm honestly trying to think of a good answer. You always flabbergast me with this stuff, Logan.
I at least have an answer, and the short answer to this, as vague as it's going to sound, is that it depends on the backfield because every backfield is different. Backup running backs are not all talented. Like for example, Travis Etienne, as far as I'm concerned, has nobody else behind him either. Tank Bigsby sucks. I don't know about their new rookie that they signed either. And ultimately, I only like to handcuff running backs in dynasty leagues because if they have a talented enough backup, then that's where I want to go get. So I'll give you an example of one that I handcuffed. Jerome Ford behind Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, we don't know if he's going to return to his prime after that devastating knee injury that was identical to the one he had in college at Georgia. And Jerome Ford has shown that he can lead this offense on the ground in the running game. So I made sure to have Jerome Ford in case Chubb can't go.
I guess my question, and maybe this will make more sense to go, if you had Chubb, are you more likely to go after Ford or less likely? Or are you specifically trying to get a star running back like Christian McCaffrey and then say like, you know what, Chubb is questionable, he's vulnerable because of the injury history, I'm going to attack and handcuff, kind of a reverse handcuff, if you will, that way?
Well, see, I don't like handcuffing anyway.
At all?
Especially if I have the top guy. Like, Chubb is a weird one because if I thought Chubb was fully healthy, I would not want to handcuff him. But he's actually in the one situation where I would see handcuffing him, where it's like, I know what he can be, but if he's not, I might as well shore up that whole backfield, which is still solid. But like I'm trying to think, like there's very few situations like that, like in the league that I would even want, where there's like a top running back, but I don't like the only other one that I'm thinking right now might be the Jets, but I don't want to give that juju to Breece Hall. That like, do I trust he's going to get through a full season yet? Like, give him another year. If he gets hurt this year, then Breece Hall becomes one of those guys where it's like, yeah, like Denver's one of those where like I don't know if Javonte gets it the whole year. So whoever the other main wide receiver or running back is, like I might handcuff that. But like otherwise, I would just be trying to get the dude getting the work for those.
See, I'm with you, Bill, but I think me and you are in the majority when it comes to this kind of at least strategy. I don't care who the backup is. If I think that backup is talented, I'm going to take him because he's going to get I'm basically making a bet he's going to get volume at some point, right? I don't make that selection based on, I have Jacobs, so that way I can't take Lloyd in the last round because I'm basically just handcuffing, and that handcuffs my team. Because if I think Lloyd is that good, maybe Jacobs gets traded. Maybe he gets, they both get a decent enough role to be productive.
You could have a spike week at the end of the year, like Jacobs doesn't have off. Maybe Dylan got hurt. Maybe Lloyd gets all the backup work. That's possible.
And it's possible. And like in a best ball league, it's definitely more possible where if you get a split backfield, all you need is that spike week anyway. So we have seen split backfield.
I would still probably steer away from that. Like if Jacobs is like your 1 or 2,
right,
I would probably steer away from that still. But like if somehow Jacobs is like your 3rd running back in a league,
right?
Like, sure, I don't mind taking that guy as a late round flyer, the Lloyd guy or something.
I want to clarify something about handcuffing as well. I don't know enough about best ball as to whether or not enough people in that format do it, but in your typical vanilla redraft leagues, you don't need to handcuff running backs because typically in those leagues, you can find a better backup or you can find just another startable head of a committee running back who's going to be more valuable than handcuffing like a Jerome Ford, for example. Like, you don't have to go get a backup running back in your typical leagues. I just love handcuffing in Dynasty because that's just the place to do it because running backs are so scarce on giant rosters. So best ball, I think you guys would have to help me out with that one because I haven't played enough.
It's almost honestly like why
honestly, it's something that's like it's your take on it from like Dynasty and that is basically the best ball take. Because best ball's new enough where it's still basically just a bunch of dudes who would always draft all year who are now doing this. So, like, they draft sort of the same way. That's why you always saw, like, it was a stark turn, like, when it went from, like, honestly, I think best ball is probably one of the things. Like, you may have noticed if you've drafted multiple years. There was a sharp turn when it went from a bunch of running backs in the first round to a bunch of wide receivers in the first round.
Yes, absolutely. And that's just the way the game goes, right?
Yeah, like that most people just start having leagues where fantasy points now have PPR, and now having a high-end wide receiver is just better than most running backs. Instead of the floor that's so good on most running backs, it would make you just take them early. Like, I remember my early drafts were like 12, 15 running backs go in the first 2 to 3 rounds. Now that's easily 15 wide receivers go in the first 2 rounds. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you, I mean, we probably remember the days in the last decade where you had probably 8 out of the first 12 picks for running backs, right? And the first 2 rounds, you typically had most of the league going running back in those first 2 rounds because, getting your stud running backs is what you need. But with less and less teams these days having, I mean, everybody's got committee backs now. Hardly anybody has bell cow backs like a CMC. So now you could probably go get a hero running back and then a wide receiver. And that's essentially what I did here with my team. After getting my Superflex quarterbacks, I went, okay, Jonathan Taylor looks good. I'll go grab him, and then I'll grab Ayuk for the turn. And for some reason, nobody wanted ETN right away, so I grabbed him.
Yeah, that works out not bad, actually.
And it is tight end premium, so I made sure to take my shots on guys like Hawkinson, Njoku, Goddard, and even Cade Otton for that matter.
I love taking shots on Njoku. Goddard is always going to be consistent in that offense as long as he's healthy. Otton's probably sneaky.
Yeah, and I
we know what he can do. If the quarterback works in Minnesota, we know what Hawk and Jefferson and them can do.
And I will say J.J. McCarthy does love the tight end. And I've said this at least privately a couple times. J.J. I feel like is going to have a better pro career than he did college because Jim Harbaugh had I think, one of the best professional ready defenses in college. He knew it. He wasn't going to play with it. It was his best utilization skill to win a national championship. He was trying to leverage his highest profitable moment to get to the NFL. He knew this was his launching pad, and he wasn't going to jeopardize that by trying to get too cute. Now, I think JJ could have ran a more complex, a more pass happy, kind of like fling it around, have fun with a wishbone kind of offense, and just like put up more passing yards. But Jim Harbaugh wanted to stick with that more consistency and efficiency type game plan and make sure they both got there and looked good. So I could definitely see JJ's offensive, like people being surprised at how much he can really sling it.
Well, yeah, we'll have to see if that translates to the pro level as he's expected to sit behind Sam Darnold for an unknown amount of games thus far. The Minnesota Vikings are not expected to be a great team this year. I think the NFC North is going to be super competitive, but yeah. I'm not expecting the Vikings to be the best out of that bunch. And it remains to be seen if they can continue to have a competent offense without Kirk Cousins. And then the defense is being led by Brian Flores as their DC, who made lemonade out of lemons last year. And we'll have to see if he can keep that up.
And right now is the perfect time to take some chances on the Vikings offense because we don't know that quarterback position. I think it's going to be JJ from week one.
I don't think so. I think it's going to be Sam Darnold.
And it might be. But my point is, if it's split at all, that's going to be a harder stack in a best ball league. That's going to be harder to invest.
If it's split at all, I'm not only is it a harder stack, I don't really want much
of it. You don't want to stack it at all, right?
I don't know how it's going to fit. It's probably not going to be efficient all year. But if Daniels could just like win the job, then I will feel so much better about the Vikings this year.
Wait, did you say Daniels?
I think he did. He meant J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, McCarthy. My bad. I keep I flip it in my head.
That actually is a perfect example, though.
If McCarthy just wins the job, then we're all good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know it was a Freudian slip, but you said Daniels. It's a perfect example of more people I think are willing to take Daniels at this point because we expect him to be the week one starter, where it's like, okay, I would rather take a chance on Daniels. He's got more athletic upside. I can easily get a John Dotson later in the draft. I can take a chance on Terry McLaurin later in the draft. Most people aren't on him. I know Pat Crane of Legendary Upside was talking about his best ball rankings and dynasty rankings, and he was saying how Daniels is just flying up the boards because people, are projecting him to be the starter. And so if you do think JJ is the guy, or if you're Evan and you think you're going to get a couple starts out of Sam Darnold, that could be that could be a stand that you'd want to take because you can get both of them really, really late in drafts. And if you're right, you're going to look good.
Yeah, because nobody is expecting Caleb Williams to be sitting behind Tyson Bagent until the Bears thinks he's ready. They picked him at number 1 overall for a reason. He's starting week 1.
He's starting week 1.
Yeah, and I mean, a guy like a J.J. McCarthy with, he was drafted 10th overall, which is not that low, but it's understandable that a guy like him that needs time to get used to the system will start behind a Sam Darnold to not get him killed right away. And then just go from there. I don't remember the Vikings offensive line to be terrible, but I mean, Kirk Cousins did take a little more hits I think he took more hits last
They
year than
had
ever.
been drafting wide receiver and other positions, though. It's not terrible, but it was a decaying offensive line. Like, they needed help. It's not going to be great this year.
Yeah, because Cousins took 17 sacks until that Achilles tear, and then the year prior he had an all-time high at 46. So he was getting killed.
I will say, if you're going to play the offensive line game in Minnesota is at least mediocre. Maybe they're not great. Maybe they're not like the most terrible. JJ, I think, does have a lot more athleticism than a lot of people do not realize that enough. Like
One would
again,
hope so.
well, again, in my opinion, at least, one of my friends is a huge Michigan guy. I do watch a modicum amount of college football, not as much about the pros, but I do watch a decent amount. I thought he showed a lot more athleticism than he showed in college. I think, especially when they knew he'd be a top 10 pick, when he kind of had that buzz, he especially started to grow up. A lot of NFL prospects started to talk about him later in the year. I think he kind of played it safe, and I don't blame him. I mean, I really don't. Uh, I mean, we've seen even in the XFL championship game, we thought Chase Garbers, for example, might have slid earlier in that game because he already had an NFL tryout. So you can't blame a guy for protecting his future investment. In this case, being their bodies, most literally.
I actually forgot he was cut by Vegas before he went into the.
That's why I was so high on him coming into the season, because I like a young guy who has a lot to prove.
But yeah, so that was pretty much all I wanted to bring up as far as recent NFL news goes. Didn't want to take up too much time with that, and I'm sure. I mean, just to get this out of the way here. So with this dynasty team, I just kept going here, tried to grab as much value as I could late. I don't love Javonte Williams, but in case he leads that committee again with Jaleel McLaughlin and possibly Samaje Perine, I mean, I'll take whatever backup volume I can get, as well as free PPR with Antonio Gibson. Marvin Mims, hopefully, if Sutton gets traded, I would expect my Mims stock to go way up. And then the rest of it from here is just taking shots on wide receivers that don't have immediate value. I mean, between Jalen Hyatt, Elijah Moore, Jonathan Mingo, I just kept going with that. Grab Pickett last minute in case Hurts gets hurt, and then Jamal Williams just for the hell of it.
I do love what we've been doing though recently in these podcasts, and it's just trying different things and showing people a different angle of football enjoyment, whether it be dynasty. We talked about betting, and we bring in these unique voices, and we don't even always know where the conversation is going. But one of the best flattery, or like you're doing mock drafts, it's all practice, it's all preparation, it's all like experimentation of how can I build, what happens if I do this. To me, that's like the best form of flattery, but it's also a mental and physical exercise. So it's like when we come into a DFS lineup in week one, we're like, hey, you know what? I know there's been a lot of buzz about this player. I know people are high in this guy. I don't know his salary, but I know people because I've been drafting in a best ball league, because I've been in a dynasty league, because I've seen the futures on a betting slate on somebody's sports book somewhere. I know they're like X player. Drake May might start for the Patriots because there's been a lot of buzz around it. I do think all these kind of formats have a relationship to each other, but that's also why I wanted to do the podcast too, Evan. It's a lot of times we watch these podcasts and we're like, oh, I wish I could do that. Sometimes I'm like, you know what? Let me just get the four groups, five guys together, and let's see what happens if we just do it. Because then at least I can. I mean, I was going to mention this. We did a draft breakdown, me and Gov, like a long time ago when the podcast first started. It was probably terrible audio in some ways, but you had some really good takes. I want to get them for some shorts that we're doing for this channel as well in the coming weeks. But you had a really good take on Drake London, Gov. You might not even remember it. And I'm like, that's the kind of catalog, like that's the kind of great stuff when you can like look back and have those memories of like, oh yeah, I was high in this guy. This mock draft did mean something. I think all that's great. I really do. And that's what I use this podcast for. I mean, I hope it helps somebody, but really I'm using it as a catalog for myself to look back at what worked, what didn't. I don't know, maybe that makes me selfish, but.
Well, and the other thing I'll tell you too, speaking of mock drafts, I don't know about you guys. I don't do a ton of mock drafts, period, because I just don't find they're as useful because when you get to the real draft, it never goes as you plan.
Yeah, like I've tried doing mock drafts. It's just like, okay, this is just for what, practice, so I can see how a robot would draft against me. Okay, whatever.
Well, Gov, a lot of people.
This is what happens if everyone just picks ADP. That never happens. The mock drafts never snipe me. They never do any of that shit. Like that happens all the fucking time.
I had a redraft league last year where somebody picked Justin Tucker in the 6th round. I love Tucker too, but man.
But I wouldn't be surprised, Evan, because I know you're doing it more with us this year. You're doing these joint best ball leagues. You've been doing these joint best balls. I'm sure they're going to help with your dynasty preparation.
With the bad area and with the good.
Yeah, I heard. I'm sorry, Logan. I heard you. Yeah, no. I mean, best ball is still a different animal though because the rankings are different. They're not the same as dynasties. So for me, it's like you have to try and calculate this with who could be value late in the season, and that's typically rookies that are drafted in like the first 3 rounds.
It is true, and I'm not trying to say they're like the same, but I'm saying at least when you do it like, even if it's like a $3 to $4 best ball league, at least like you know that most people are actually going to be drafting with you. It's an actual human making the picks. There's some kind of, oh, this guy he's getting some attention in the media. He's getting some buzz on the internet or on Twitter or on social media because people are noticing him. It's a lot better than just going to like a standard mock draft site and being like, oh, let's try to draft it in the middle of the afternoon.
Yeah, because what I was wondering, at least with the one that we were in about a week or 2 ago, I was wondering how many of them were just trying to fuck around and find out just because the entry fee was so low where they could try some things they wouldn't do in a more expensive lineup.
That definitely happens, and some of that, I think...
it definitely does. I've done another draft since then myself. Like, I honestly have thought about just like, I can do a draft with us under mine. Like, I'm going to be doing a lot of probably $3 drafts over the next couple of months, just like getting them in. I have no problem doing one on stream.
Yeah, go cover your ears because I know you don't want to be a part of this, but I think me and Donnie are at least going to be covering our best ball on a weekly basis. We're going to do like either a second or a third show at some point. We're not going to go.
That's fine. It's fine to do that until we get to the start of the season. Once you get to the start of the season, literally nothing you can do. You're not allowed to talk about best ball till week 15, and people are hitting the playoffs.
That's what I'm saying. You're going to have to.
The CIA will come and get you and have that YouTube channel. No. Best Ball Bros. No.
I'm going to have to give Evan my phone.
Talk about it all you want up to the start of the season, and then you shut up about it until week 14.
I wish that was going to happen. Evan, you're going to have to get my phone number and make sure that I'm okay and the CIA hasn't
Now,
come.
as I believe, as you remember, all of that changed because I had 2 teams getting through, so I wanted to talk about my teams like week 12, 13, 14.
Yeah, it is funny, though, how we want to brag when we're right. I mean, I think that's just human nature.
Well, I mean, yeah, we don't want a victory lap too early either. That's the thing, because I mean, it's still a long season, and even then, sometimes with what you guess correctly, it can be just luck. Like the pieces that you guys hit on last year, which was brilliant with the Puka Nacua Matthew Stafford stack, like that worked out like lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, hitting
like you
that,
can only capture that so infrequently.
I can tell you like a couple good picks we had.
Like, I had teams with like a Puka and Stroud stuff that didn't get through.
Yeah.
Mostly, and like one of them I remember, it would have gotten through the final round, but Devonta Smith needed like 4 more fantasy points in that game. And like week 16. Oh God.
But
Philly. Quit tush pushing. Throw it to Devonta Smith.
Evan, that's why I'm strange because even like take something. You guys all know I'm strange at this point, obviously.
Oh, but, trust us, we know.
Yeah, even take a passion of mine that's not sports related in cooking. I really enjoy like the process of cooking more than I enjoy eating. So I love cooking for other people. Like I love inviting someone over, having the, I don't even drink beer, but having like beer in the fridge when my one friend comes over, because he drinks it, but he knows I don't. So like when he opens up the fridge and there's beer there, he knows that like I went out of my way to make sure it was there for him. Like there's something about like cooking and the preparation and having those aromas and like I get really into that.
Logan,
So,
you out of all the DFS podcasts out there, you are the Philadelphia 76ers. You are all about the process.
I mean, I really do enjoy it. Like I that is the game. Like I I was watching League of Legends podcast last night. I know nothing about League of Legends. I don't care about League
You
of
got the
Legends.
free contest ticket too, didn't you? You
Yeah,
got the free contest ticket too. I thought fucking Fly had it, and then fucking Test something like that.
That's exactly it, though. They offered me this contest,
I did
and I'm
think
like,
G2 is gonna do. I play League of Legends, so like,
I know if it wasn't so late, I would actually called you up because I knew you knew stuff. I'm like, you know what? I still like the process of this. I'm gonna see if I can figure it out.
put your money into your jungler. Make him your captain. I forget which one. It was either the jungler or the ADC from one of the winning teams that ended up being captain. That's sort of what you.
Yeah, I did have it, but I didn't have him captain. But to get back to my point, Evan, so I can of course I'll victory lap. I'll be honest with you. I'm very happy I was right about Puka Nakua. I was high on him, way high. I was playing preseason DFS, and I was saying back in preseason week 1, if you don't have Tank Dell, you're stupid. On this slate preseason week 1, I'm telling everyone on Twitter. I'm messaging Donnie. He's like, dude, you're really high on Tank Dell. If you're right about this, cool, but like, you're really high on him. But I can tell you our worst pick in that best ball team. It was Tim Patrick.
Well, that was only because he got hurt again, right?
That's what you would say, right? But I'd say, damn it, you probably should have known better looking because he's always hurt. He's kind of like the NFL's equivalent of like Brandon Roy. He like has good flashes, but he's hurt 90% of his career. Yeah, that 10% looks really good, but 90%.
Don't give him the Greg Oden already. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, come
Like,
on now.
I'm just saying he's been on the medical tent more than he's been on the field.
A lot of people blow out their ACL in the left knee and then blow it out in the right knee the next day. That's like a normal thing. Like, it's the offshoot. Like, you blew out your right knee, so now either your left knee or your left ankle was doing more shit. So then you blow that out the next season because it was overstressed. Like, most people don't realize, like, after the surgery, you need to do just, like, light work so that you don't overstress any part of your body until it heals. And then you can fully go everywhere. Otherwise, you're going to overcompensate and break something else.
Yeah, but I mean, in the first place, it's not really a good idea to worry about injury concerns with players because injuries can happen to anybody. Nobody expected Barkley, for example, to tear his ACL a couple of seasons ago off of a non-contact tackle from Eddie Jackson. Non-contact meaning Jackson didn't land on it; it was just a step that went wrong. You can't. It's like trying to bank on touchdowns. You just can't do it. It's too fluid.
Yeah. See, but that's why I love drafting with the four of us because we have such a different mindset. Because I will always factor in like injuries. I will always try to like play this Mystic Mac kind of role. And like I think we all bring different ingredients to the table, and it creates this melting pot of great drafting strategies. And we're kind of forced into it, being somewhat malleable to each other's strategies in some sense because it's like, well, I wouldn't do this. This guy wouldn't be my ADP, but this is the best thing we can do. And so it creates a very unique kind of build. And I've always found that drafting with somebody is probably the most fun you can have.
I'll add this story too. I don't know if I ever told this on the show. My first return to fantasy football in a redraft league was 2016. It had been like maybe 10 years since I last played. I drafted Jordy Nelson as my first wide receiver when he was, I think that was his last season with the Packers. He had just come off an ACL tear and a repair surgery. So he was ready to go week 1. A lot of people were sinking on Jordy Nelson just because of that injury. People get scared of injuries like that. They're not sure if he's going to be the same. I grabbed him as my top wideout, and he finished as the top wide receiver in fantasy points that season. So don't be afraid of injuries as long as they're healed and ready to go. And even then, like in the Dynasty League I showed you, I still took Joe Burrow and TJ Hawkinson, who are questionably ready for this season as well. So don't be afraid of injuries is what I'm saying.
See, and I love that because you're not afraid of injuries. I'm afraid of them, but I don't care about them in the same. Like I almost expect them to happen, probably at a rate that you don't expect, or maybe most people don't think. Like I just assume 90% of the league is going to get hurt, and then when it's only like 30% and I'm way over exaggerated, it's like okay, it's not as bad as you thought. But I'm just a pessimistic guy in general. But I do it out of love. I don't know. I'm a different thinker that way.
Gov, what do you think to both of what we said?
I'll admit I'm kind of pissed. I'm stuck on my lineup. I was looking really good in my baseball lineup, so I got horribly distracted. The Detroit game just ended. I have two of the main guys from it. Like everything's looking good, and then Gaussman just let up through 2 runs. It's like, wait, where did all this good mojo I was getting, where I just needed Gaussman and a couple of hits from fucking Cleveland?
Fair enough.
Sorry, I got totally distracted in my baseball lineup.
Fair enough. Logan,
I'm completely sorry about that.
It's all good. What do we want to look at here with our best ball lineup?
Yeah,
I actually had a question though off of Gov's kind of like live reaction there, because I have seen a lot of content around this idea recently. Gov, if you can focus just for a second, how do you?
They walked fucking Martinez. Come on, I know it's clean. I'm sorry, the Cleveland.
No, but I think a lot of like sports media has tried to like capitalize on this idea of making betting or integrating gambling or like integrating fantasy more into the broadcast thing, because like ESPN bets, for example, ESPN got more into the betting space. We've seen like Underdog invest in like Pat Mayo's show and steal him away from DraftKings. We've seen more like ESPN centric shows of like, oh, we're gonna do a betting show on top of this golf. Like, what does an actual like? Because me and you were kind of the same. We dabble in a lot of the different offerings. We play some sports book. We know the odds. We play some DraftKings. What do they got to do to actually make it entertaining for us, but also like appealing enough that casuals will watch it, or is it just a failed venture?
The only thing that really brings in the casuals is the big prize pools. Like that's just like with casinos, the jackpots is what brings people in. So like as long as they're running Millie Makers, they'll always have football people coming in. And it just so happens that they have enough every time to like run Millie Makers for like 10, 12 weeks. So like
you had to be
they only do it for special events in other sports, although they've been doing it more. So like the fact that they do it for every major in golf, the fact that they did it for opening weekend of the playoffs and the 2, I believe the first game of both conference finals and the playoffs all had Millie Makers. It's like that helps. Like any one of these smaller niche sports getting even $100,000 prize pool. Like remember, beginning of UFL, their big tournament was only ever like $50K, $25K.
Yeah, that was week 1.
By the end, it was down to $5 and $10K. Like if it had $100K for half the season or most of the season, because it kept filling that tournament, that $10, $15, $20 tournament, so it kept filling 50 to 70,000 lineups. Like it could do that. But there's got to be enough money in it to like entice people. You got to be able to give them that bang. Like that's the only thing that's good to layman's. Like the guys like us, we don't need that so much because we're like you said, if we're doing sports book stuff, if we're betting props, if we're doing an underdog draft, like whatever it is, like we're getting other things out of it.
But if I made you the sports director of this betting sweat, like let's just say it's a live sweat show, right? You have to make a live sweat interesting for a mass audience. Like what do you do? Because I have heard rumors, and I think it would be a cool idea, but maybe I'm too niche, and maybe Evan would be a perfect guy to bounce this off of because I don't think you dabble a lot in the podcast I know like a lot of YouTube creators. I know a lot of DFS website owners. Shout out to Establish the Run, by the way. They just celebrated their anniversary. But the point is so they're all trying to garner attention with trying to keep people's dollar, but then we see like Kevin Hart commercials where they're always trying to preach winning, but as a gambler, you don't win that much. Like I don't win every night. It's more shots on goals. It's more. But how do you program a watchable sweat show? Because I do think there's equity there. I do think there's a potential there. There's talks that DraftKings basically wants to do a red zone kind of sweat show where they like show different events going on. They show different DFS accounts that are winning. Maybe you're winning in football, and then they show a golf lineup the same week, for example, on a different screen.
Yeah, I can see it like thing where like you like what I already like have DK live on in the background usually. I'm watching the games anyway. Like on a Sunday football, I will be watching Red Zone, but then I'll also have DK live. So if DK wanted to create their own show, that's
essentially what they're talking about doing.
Like getting the rights to create their own show that would have DK live and all the like maybe anytime you go to a game, he gives you the odds for the game for the quarter or whatever. But top fantasy points, whenever a score happens and a big point jump happens, you go to that game. Yeah. Like all of it, just like Red Zone. Like I could see them doing something like that. And you could set that up for basically any sporting event. Or like not like if you wanted to do that and have like an NBA nightly Red Zone, you could. Like you'd need to get the rights, but you could.
Well, let's just say, for example, like Osimo, who probably Evan has no idea. Well, let's say Osimo and Pete Overzet are competing in the top 10 of this football contest, and it's week 5, and you can bring in like a Pat Mayo to commentate it, but then you can do like a live check-in with them. They can jump on a Zoom call or what have you, and they can go on and they can be talking back and forth and watching the game at the same time. I think people would enjoy that kind of sweat, but maybe a casual like Evan wouldn't be into it. So how do you like appeal to an Evan, but also like, because I do find like watching someone sweat to be very entertaining. Maybe I'm just the niche though.
Just sweat, nothing else?
That's all, man. I do think there's a live energy to watching someone win enough money to change their life. Or does that
that's the thing, like figuring out a way, because like you wouldn't know who's winning every night, so you couldn't like have the people on unless like you could always like give out maybe a Discord link or something and be like, hey, if you're in the contest, come join the Discord chat. If you're winning in the contest, we'll bring you on in the voice chat. You can talk on live on DK in the sweat zone or something like that.
Right.
But then they like ideally like again on the big slate they would have the large tournament. So like on Sunday slate you're doing Red Zone. Yeah. You have the Millie Maker tournament. And maybe even the large like $3 tournament because that's the other big like entry one. But like it's much lower dollar, so a lot of different people can get into it, as opposed to the $20 to $25 Millie Maker. But they're both like multi-max like tournaments.
Right. I just
one's
would
a
like
million, one's 100K. So like you could basically just like at any point in time go to the top like 15 or 20, just like we would check where our lineup is. I'm 450th, I'm 30th out of first. Just show to the top 10. That way, and shout them out. Shout out the screen names. Like that's all you could really do, and then keep a channel open so that if people wanted to come in and sweat because they are up there, like people might do that. There's plenty of people like in the community who are on Discord and that. Like, so I wouldn't be surprised.
I do think it's a good idea. And it's a lot. I just think it's a lot more transparent promotion too, opposed to having like a Chris Rock or a kind of character like that, a movie star, to be like, oh, come in to DraftKings and bet. Like that takes a lot of money, and then they present this like celebrity guy who always wins. I think that's very disingenuous because that's not how gambling really is.
You don't like Kevin Hart?
I mean, I don't mind him. I'm not going to hate his entertainment, but that's the idea. It's like DraftKings almost gets sold like this entertainment vehicle where it's like, oh, just come in and get $200 deposit bonus and you're gonna win. Like that's not how it is. And I think even if you've been a successful gambler who doesn't deposit much, like I think the last time I deposited was almost a year ago. But
They,
it's
they
more
gotta
based
they gotta
on,
they gotta tickle people's balls a little bit to get him to come in.
and that's unfortunate because I'm saying like the real skill, whether how much gambling is luck and skill, you could argue in terms of the actual gamification. But I think the real skill and the thing that you can control is your bankroll management. And I wish they would highlight that more because I do think like the better gamblers in the space or the better DFS players know how to manage a bankroll. I just wish they would highlight that feature more because I do think that would be like a more interesting kind of deep dive for a beginner and it would promote itself easier from a responsible gambling
I,
perspective.
I agree, Logan, because I think that's the responsible, safer thing to do. But you know how the business model is. They're not going to want to teach people how to be good with their money because otherwise DraftKings and FanDuel aren't going to make as much money. Same with Underdog.
Yeah, they're just going to let people come in and play the contest and put 1-800-GAMBLER down at the bottom. Like,
Maybe.
this is what's going to happen.
And like trust me, I understand. Like I don't think they owe it to us to like protect us. I think this is a very adult game, and if you're going to play it and you're going to risk your money, you got to play it like an adult. So I do understand the responsible gaming element, and like I do think they do enough. Now, do I wish they did more? Do I wish they like were more honest and transparent about it? Yes, but at the same time, I do know what I'm getting into. I just think there's a lot better way to be more transparent and have fun with it because I don't know I do see what someone winning life changing money. I just think it would be a much better promotional dollar or better spent time promoting that than showing Kevin Hart dribbling a basketball in a DraftKings commercial.
Yeah, probably, but that's again like you don't know who's going to win. So you can't really like have them there doing it. Like you could have guys playing the contest, like we could all like with our own lineup like we do, and then we could have a show on Sunday doing that. And when we are winning, we could have that sweat. But like I know how hard it is to win. Like that might be once a season you get that sweat, depending on the contest you play.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about this last show with Moshe that, the big cash prize that you get out of it are always these contests that have these impossible odds that are in there. Like Van Jefferson catches a pass for 75 yards and a touchdown with 12 minutes to go in the third quarter. Like who the fuck is going to get that right?
It's true, but I do think that's where like the fun of the parlay comes in, and it's easier to sweat as a kind of group. Like us, for example, the five of us have a Discord channel. We placed a similar bet that we want to cheer for, that we want to, root for that evening. Let's just say it's a Celtics bet, for example. And Evan's like, you know what? I'm not the biggest basketball fan, but Donnie's into this. These guys have good projections on it. Give me an extra reason to watch. I'm going to do it responsibly. So you get in on it, and then we're all like sweating. Let's just say Jason Tatum's points total for that evening. So then each basket has a point. So even you, Evan, who's not a huge basketball fan, has an extra buy-in. Now, that has to be measured and balanced. You can't get crazy, but there is a kind of cool element of we're just going to put a little bit extra on this game. But it's kind of like salt and pepper. If you put too much seasoning on your food, you're going to ruin it. So there is that bankroll management element to it, but I do think it adds something to the game, as long as you can do it in a healthy way.
In the first place, like, even if I don't participate in an NBA contest or even watch an NBA game, I'm happy enough for Donnie's Celtics that I will at least try to show some interest in it because I know it matters a lot to him. I get it. Like, I would love to see the Bulls back in the NBA Finals, and it hasn't happened in 25 fucking years with Michael Jordan when it's still on the team. But, good for Donnie. I'm happy for him, right?
I wish I was.
I'm not. Fuck the Celtics.
Yeah, I get it. You wanted the Mavs to win.
Not even that. Like, even I like the Mavs. I just don't like the Celtics. I am a Boston hate.
Yeah, and I'm even worse.
Anyone but them. even rather see Philly win the title. And,
Dang.
let New York win. Anyone but Boston. I don't know. New York winning it might be just as bad. Don't you need to give them a reason to be loud?
Good. Hey, good. I mean, imagine the Knicks fans if they ever get back to the NBA Finals. New York will be on fire.
Bye.
Please don't light New York on fire.
I wish Donnie was here because there's so much news. Like my Magic are making moves. We've re-signed so many guys. We just gave Franz the bag. Oh God.
We are going to do more basketball content because it's really unfortunate. I'm in a financial place where one of the biggest rewards to myself was making sure I had all the sports packages. People don't realize this, but basketball is my first love more than football. Even still, like I love basketball. So the fact that it's probably our strongest shared passion. Now it's funny because Evan has no passion for basketball, and it's probably still our most shared passion because the three of us love it that much. And so it's really disheartening that we covered it the least, but it really doesn't lend itself well to a DFS sport.
Sorry, audience. It's my fault. I don't like NBA anymore.
Oh, God.
No.
Yeah, that's why we're bringing in the baseball guy.
I do find it very fun to play DFS basketball, but it's a hard DFS content build because you literally have to make adjustments like 5 minutes before a slate locks, and it would literally be me and Gov and Donnie just yelling at each other, looking at a screen, not presenting.
Don't talk to me. I'm trying to get my shit done.
Right, unless you knew the language, it would literally be us just like screaming, unique names.
Like, this guy's gonna play a lot more minutes now. I gotta get him in. Oh my god, he's too cheap. Oh my god, I can't fit him in. Oh my god. Yeah, we don't need that 5 minutes before every half hour on the hour for 4 straight hours. Like
exactly.
The NBA is some nights.
Now, if that was annoying for the minute and a half that he did that for, imagine that for like the next 30 minutes, because that's literally what an NBA lock is like, Evan. Now, it's an adrenaline pump. Like, trust me, if you're into it, if you speak the language, if you know the lingo,
it can be subtle comedy because, like I said, like for a half an hour, we'll be talking through these very like gently, like, well, I mean, this guy could be ruled out, and if he is, we're probably going to be looking at like this guy playing more, this guy playing more, and we'll be calmly talking through it. And then the lineup will drop with like literally 3 minutes before the game locks. And now we're scrambling, trying to remember everything we just said in the last half hour and getting it into our lineups and shit.
I do think that's why NFL is the most popular DFS sport. It's obviously the most popular sport in general, so I guess that's the easy one. But if I had to give you one that's a bit more complex, I would tell you that's the reason, is because you can literally build a first look for NFL. You can kind of update that throughout the week, and then like Saturday night, you can have fun. You can kick back with a couple of drinks. You can build a pillow. You can have fun ideas. Not a whole lot changes. I mean, some stuff changes, but and everyone knows the football players. Like even the most casual fan of sports knows some modicum of NFL. Or if you're a real
all women now know who Travis Kelce is. Like, yes, this is a thing.
Exactly. I mean, you say that as a joke, but you're being somewhat serious. Like that is the
yes, I am saying it facetiously, but like that is what you mean. Like, yes, everyone knows some form of a football player.
Right.
Most people know the concept of a football player and can associate a name.
And that's the beautiful thing with the arena. You play with football too, Evan. It's like you can play in a 10-man office pool league where everyone's just like, they shoot the shit for the first 3 minutes of their work shift in between coffee, right? Or you can play in a super dedicated dynasty league where you're like in a sleeper draft and you have your Discord open all day and you're talking in code because you don't want to tell your friend that you're trading with another friend, and like at a barbecue you guys are all huddled up, in the kids' table. Like there's different levels to it, and that's the fun of it. Speaking of levels, really quickly, I don't care how long we go, but I do want to kind of just do some rapid fire here. Who's some of the guys that you were kind of disappointed that we didn't get, some guys that you thought we got good value on that we might not be able to get next week or next draft, or maybe you're looking forward to getting them because of some news you heard. Just give people an update on like almost not so much so we can do rankings, but like what are some hot button topics that you would like to talk about, player specific if you have them, about guys that you think might move up and down our ranks?
First things first, can we see our best ball team?
Yeah, go to the draft.
I suppose that'd be all right. I suppose.
Yeah, because I think that would at least help illustrate our points. Because I'm being that we drafted CeeDee Lamb with our first round pick, I'm just disappointed we didn't get Dak Prescott.
Oh, speaking of which, I did purchase a cleaner that cleans out electronic devices. I promise I will spray my mouse, make sure she's in pristine condition before the next draft. I did click. I went back to our podcast, by the way. You guys can do the same and like and subscribe and watch that live draft. I went back. You can actually hear me click when we decided to draft Dak Prescott. It did ease the soul a little bit to know I can at least hear the click. It didn't register through the draft, unfortunately. That's a total mistake by me.
An Evan Ingram accidental pick is not going to make me lose sleep. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
I'm fine with Evan Ingram. Yeah. Like he's one of my tier tight ends. Like if I have him and it's him and one other dude, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, because being that we got George Pickens as our second wide receiver, I don't want to take a chance on either Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. We can leave Pickens alone with that. Like I know it's cool to stack in best ball, but you know I'm not a firm stacker.
He's just a volume target guy.
He should be the top wideout.
Grab a number one wide receiver while he's on the board.
Like, how many?
What was left for a number one wide receiver? Amari Cooper.
I'm going to challenge you though, because I'm curious. I think you guys are the lowest out of me, at least. How many targets would you say? I'll ask it this way to try to get you to have different answers. How many targets do you think he averages per game this season?
Pickens?
Yeah, just his average.
Pickens, I think, will command anywhere between 7 and 9 per game.
Not catches.
That sounds about right, but I feel like I'd skew it to the low end. Like I was going to say 6 or 7.
I'll be honest.
But that depends on who the quarterback is.
Yeah. See, that's why I asked targets, because I figured then I'm holding you to a number value, and you guys would be slightly different. I'm a lot higher. I think he's going to get at least 12 to 13 targets a game.
I think
if Justin Fields plays most of the year, that's possible. I don't think Russ will ever do that.
I don't think Russ will do that either because he likes targeting tight ends more often. So I think if Russ starts, you can fire up those Freiermuth stocks.
Yeah, see, and you might be right about the quarterback. I'm just higher on this offense in general. I think Arthur Smith kills any passing game. I think he's worse than Jim Harbaugh. A lot of people talk about Harbaugh's running attack and just like, the Chargers will never throw. I think Arthur Smith is the worst for any passing game.
I was just arguing about this with somebody earlier today, too, that Arthur Smith's passing offenses have all been fucking terrible, no matter if he was with the Titans, no matter if he was with the Falcons.
And Evan, to that point, it's not to say he's a bad coordinator or anything, but if you hire him as a coordinator, you can't then expect him to make you a different dish. Like his expertise or his specialty is the run game.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if the Steelers' guards and the entire offensive line can support the run game because, passing touchdowns were extremely high for the Titans. I think it was 2020 or 2021, somewhere in there. They were like 7th in passing touchdowns. But the reason they could do that was they could get to the red zone thanks to Derrick Henry. The Steelers don't have that kind of run game. They don't have a Najee Harris or a Jalen Warren who can replicate what Derrick Henry does. And the offensive line is not good at supporting the run yet. They seem to try to improve the offensive line. So I don't know what to expect out of this. I don't think it's going to be good.
Correct.
Yeah, this is a weird year for Pittsburgh. I don't know what to do. Like,
True,
is this them kind of sabotaging the team so that they finally have a non-500 season and can get rid of Tomlin?
But when people are topsy-turvy on an offense, and I think the narrative hasn't turned around, because I do think even if the Steelers have a bad year, they're going to pass more than they did last year. I think that's a guarantee. I don't think enough people are baking that into the projections.
What's a bad year for the Steelers? Because they've yet to go below 9 wins ever since Tomlin's been their coach.
That's what I mean. Like maybe this is them trying to sabotage and finally have like a 5-win, 4-win season, get a top 5 pick, and justify moving on and getting a new 20-year coach.
See, I think if they wanted to sabotage Tomlin, they could have done a lot worse.
True. But they also are Pittsburgh, and like they kind of know how to run an organization right. So like maybe this will all end up working out. Like who knows?
Yeah.
And to your point, Evan, even if the organization wanted to screw Tomlin, and we're playing the what if game, the scenario game. So
I don't actually think that's what's happening.
I don't either, because the Steelers are too hard-headed to do something like that, and they don't tank.
But let's just assume that was the case, right? Like we knew some kind of monopoly game, and there was some kind of conspiracy going on, and that was the case. The players still love Tomlin. That's clear. So the players would still try to win. So then I didn't even think that would work. But I do think no matter if they're winning or losing, that we see a lot more passing, including a team that we are also high on with the Chargers late in the draft. We took a lot of shots from the Chargers. I could see them being a lot better. Yeah, Harbaugh's going to run the ball, that's clear, but he loves the play action game. And if you're going to tell me that Justin Herbert might not throw as much, but his throws are going to be more efficient, I think that lends itself to how we drafted.
Harbaugh will let his offensive coordinator sort of run his offense. So, like, who's his offensive coordinator again? I forget.
I have no idea.
On the team, like, I'd have to look up. I forget who he got for his staff. But, like, that's what they're going to end up doing. And Harbaugh is going to make them very disciplined and able to execute.
Greg Roman.
Oh, he brought Greg Roman with him?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was.
Okay, so they are going to run the ball 35 times a game.
There's a reason they got Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins.
Yes, guys who can definitely take the beating of the NFL for a full season running 40 times a game.
It could be, but if you remember the Falcons when they went to the Super Bowl against the Patriots, everyone thought the same thing about that team. Now, maybe Harbaugh does it to more of an extreme, but that season, Matt Ryan had a almost MVP-like season with Julio Jones, and it was mainly based off of the play-action rollout, where he just took deep shots. That could easily happen with Palmer, who we drafted.
I think the Chargers will be fine in their passing game anyway. It's probably not. It's probably going to be a bit ugly, kind of like the Ravens were under Greg Roman, but somebody is going to benefit from Justin Herbert being a damn good passer too. I don't know if I want to compare him to Lamar Jackson, but at the same time, Herbert's proven himself. Just give him the pieces he needs and give him a goddamn offensive line too.
Or just give him the threat of all you need is Herbert to have time. So whether that's a really good offensive line or just the threat of the run game to freeze the defense, I just think we could see a more efficiency. And sometimes we talked about this with ADP. You're just drafting off of what other people find or what other people believe is going to happen. And right now, I just think everyone's lower on the Chargers and Steelers offenses than they should be.
I would agree.
Maybe by the time we draft again, it's not the case. Because I'm not a big believer that Herbert's going to put up like an MVP-like season. But I think right now people are drafting him or just thinking lower on the Chargers than they should be. Anything like that stick out for you guys? If not, we can close up shop if you want. But is there any other under the radar topics or even player discussions? Because these rankings are doing really good SEO value right now. People are really looking for opinions.
I have two things to cover, but I'll let Gov go first if he has something.
No, you go first.
Okay, so the Chicago Bears are getting a lot. I don't know about a lot, but they're getting a significant amount of hype for their new offense, which is unprecedented in our times. At least in my lifetime, we've never been stacked like this in the passing game. This is brand new to us. I'm excited on paper. But what's going to be the difference maker is A, do the pieces work well with Shane Waldron as their OC? Because I know a lot of Seahawk fans didn't like him. And B, does Matt Eberflus do a better job coaching the team to the point where they don't blow leads late in the fourth quarter? So those are the two biggest keys on what's going to be most valuable for guys like a DJ Moore, Keenan Allen in his older age, and then Roma Dunze as a rookie. So I still love Keenan Allen as a rock-solid target, who I think will be very beneficial for a rookie like Caleb Williams. And then Cole Kmet will still at least be a good alternate option at tight end to, he's got incredible hands, Cole Kmet. So in double coverage, I trust his hands.
Backup. Didn't you sign a decent backup?
We did. We got Gerald Everett from the Chargers.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Which I could see that being a legit second tight end as a weapon.
Definitely. I don't think Everett is going to get at that many snaps, but he will be a solid set of hands as another backup. In addition to Mercedes Lewis setting an NFL record, what does he need? Like 7 more yards?
Oh, I forget what it is.
Yeah, which I assume, if anyone doesn't know, Gov and I would play a lot of Showdown, but Gov, I feel like, has a real specialty for the Showdown. A couple of seasons ago? You were really high in Mercedes Lewis, Aaron Rodgers connection, and it pays off big for you.
It just always seemed like on primetime games, he always threw him red zone targets. Like it seemed every primetime game Green Bay had, Mercedes Lewis had a red zone target.
And if I'm being honest,
okay, so he's going to catch a touchdown at some point, and he's always like $500, $1,000
right
down. So like that's the guy I want to target, definitely.
Now, Evan, if I'm being honest, it was a bit of a bit. Like, it was a bit of a fun, a joker on moment,
Oh, yeah. It's like, we know it's not happening every time, but he always throws the ball.
But honestly, you would honestly look at projections. You knew that Aaron Rodgers loved Mercedes Lewis. You knew he would be on the field. Like,
it was just staring you there. Like, he gets that target in those games. If he's playing this game, he's probably getting the target. Whether or not he catches it is a different story. But he gets the target.
And that's all I was saying is that's a perfect example of ADP. Chasing versus knowing, hey, this guy's a value because of his price. We're not saying Mercedes Lewis is a great addition, but he could be a great addition to, hey, I'm going to take Caleb Williams because I trust the Bears offense a little bit more. It does it's not that you would pair them, you would stack them, but just knowing, hey, you have competent offense, you have different pieces now. You have a better run game because you signed them. Those kind of stuff really do matter.
Definitely. And I'm not even expecting Caleb Williams to be a top 10 quarterback this year. I want to give him at least 2 seasons to find his stride in the NFL before crowning him the new king and the future of passing. But
yeah, which is a whole nother topic of just how people unfairly, in my opinion, even if you're successful, have this unfair expectation of you have to exceed this level because you're a high draft pick. General managers make a lot of mistakes.
And he seems to be ready for the challenge too. I mean, he had a lot of pressure on him at USC, so I think he's ready.
But let's just say he puts up historic, play this scenario out with me. If he has a historic season, right? He exceeds all this expectation. He's let's just say he's an all-pro, right? He really blows out his rookie year. People are still going to say oh, well, next year I expect him to be better than Patrick Mahomes or on Patrick Mahomes level. The Bears are geniuses. He could set historical records and people are still going to expect next year to be, better than the current year. That's the unfortunate part.
Well,
we don't celebrate even historical moments enough.
Yeah, I mean, in any case, I'm just taking things 1 week at a time at this point in the season, and then I'll move to 1 day at a time once the season gets started because there's so many variables at play that I don't care what people want to set expectations of or shit talk about. It's a lot of noise, and I want to just take things a little bit at a time.
Well, how do you fade that noise, though, Gov, in a best ball? Honestly, how do you take that hype, he's talking about, with a Caleb Williams and play that against people in a draft?
Well, I honestly, I'm not sure. Ideally, if what you're saying is true, those people have overdrafted Caleb Williams because right now, if you look at ADP, Caleb Williams is not being drafted as if they think he's going to be bad. He's
pull him up,
drafted as if he's I was about to say, Logan, if you see where, I forget where he goes.
Yeah, I have to find him in the draft, but I'll work on that.
You can just go to the
Can I search in the players?
Yeah,
He's in the 9th round.
And
Okay,
have click the show drafted button at the top too.
Should have drafted. This is a good tutorial, but I don't see. Oh, here it is.
It's right above the
Yeah, he's got right there.
So like you can see what number. Like you don't got to click on that. I need to see where he was drafted in our draft, which was 108, which is basically where he gets drafted. So like he was basically taken where he gets drafted in our draft. So no real movement. But like he's not being drafted in the that's behind the Trevor Lawrences. That's behind you can go to 108. Just go to the quarterback now. Just literally search quarterback. Okay.
Yeah.
So scroll up. Who's going ahead of him? So he's going with Derek Carr and you got to get rid of the.
I got to get rid of his name, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same
we know
thing.
He's going at 108. Look at all the quarterbacks going ahead of him. We already aren't really touting him very high. If anything, guys who really like him will be taking him where Burrow and Prescott are. We'll be taking him where Jordan Love and Trevor Lawrence.
I think it's kind of amazing that Anthony Richardson went ahead of him too.
Not for me. I would have him ahead of Murray, but even that being the case, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get Williams.
Yeah, because somebody will. There are always people who believe in the hype and they reach for him. So if people want to reach, then they'll just have to learn their lesson. I wanted to rhyme that with teach, but I couldn't figure out how.
I would reach, Evan, but not to, that's the problem. Is some people want to extend that reach to a point that I'm even uncomfortable. I think I would reach higher than you, but I think my reach is okay. I'm not extending my wingspan. Where I think a lot of, like Joe was saying, I think a lot of people, if they want to take them, they're going to take them a lot higher than we'd be comfortable with.
Yeah, if they think they're going to get the next C.J. Stroud, they're going to be real loud about it and take him 3 rounds early.
Right.
Yep.
I'm basically saying me and Evan are not getting him. We would take him at very different spots, but we're both not getting him.
Now, I'm a guy who and Logan might be this way too, I'm kind of bullish on a Bryce Young or some other of these rookies that I might be willing to take a round or two early. Even Caleb Williams, I probably would take before 108 if I needed it. If I'm looking for a second quarterback, I would consider him in that same range as ETN, Purdy, Murray.
Oh, shout out to Donnie to keep him involved in a show that he couldn't be part of tonight. He's really high on Jordan Love, for example. I think you're either a Love guy or you're not. He's one of those guys where it's you either believe in him or you don't.
Agreed.
Yeah. Jordan Love is in a prove-it year, too, because the first half of his last season really stunk, and then he started picking it up in the second half of the season, and good for him, but this is his prove-it year. Is he going to keep up what he had the second half of last year, or are the Packers going to have to consider looking for a new guy in a year or two from now? That's the question.
Now, I would end the show, but we actually picked up some more viewers. We're getting some good numbers, so I don't know how long you guys want to go. I think we're good.
Okay. I had one more topic I wanted to bring up that we don't have to spend too much time on. The Raiders hired Luke Getsy as their offensive coordinator. I believe we drafted Devontae Adams, if I'm not mistaken.
We were high on him. I don't think we drafted him yet.
Okay. Yeah, so we were high on him.
We drafted him, though, because we are high on him.
Yeah, and DJ Moore did fine with Luke Getsy as the offensive coordinator because he was the obvious top target and Justin Fields was going to feed him anyway. Aside from that, I'm, for the most part, out on the rest of the Raiders offense because I'm not sure how well the quarterback play is going to be. In addition to, is it going to be Aiden O'Connell? Is it going to be Gardner Minshew? Are they going to do fine? I hated the Luke Getsy play calling because it was very fucking vanilla to the point where he made Matt Nagy look like a genius on offense, where it's either going to be just some running back draw or just more flat routes. And he was utterly completely predictable on what plays he was going to call to the point where Shaq Barrett of the Buccaneers knew what was going to happen before the Bears did. It doesn't get more predictable than that when the defense knows before you.
I just think I'm higher on the zero RB kind of build where I load up on wide receivers a lot higher than most people. So I think I'm the highest on Adams. That's why I thought we had him higher. We do have him 2 picks ahead of ADP, so we are higher on him than the average. But I think you guys had him pushed down a bit more than I did. Because I would have had him ahead of Brown. I would have had him ahead of London.
because he's still a 1,000-yard receiver. There's no reason to doubt that he's going to slow down right now. But with Luke Getsy as his OC, I mean, I'll take him for a fair price, but I think he's the only Raider I want.
And even the headman AP has shown the propensity to kind of have that more Mike Tomlin approach where he wants to kind of grind it out. That's why I'm higher on White, which I know you're not. Maybe that's where you said you're just out on the Raiders offense, which is okay. But even I have to admit the AP idea that they're going to just run the ball and be a vanilla offense does kind of hurt Adams. Because I do believe in the talent.
I agree. I think that's going to hurt his routes. In addition to, I know you guys. I'm probably the only Zamir White doubter here because I think this is going to be a running back by committee where White's going to get less time on the field because he's not a passing down back, and I just don't think they're going to have a good running game now that Jacobs is gone. They're missing talent back there, and I like White, but I don't think he's good enough.
I don't know if I could argue that he's shown a lot of receiving upside to that point, Evan. You might be right about that, but I think he has the potential to be a part of that passing game a lot more than he has been. So maybe, I totally understand that I'm going off of this idea of what he is more than what he's shown so far. I do have one question to quickly close up shop because I found it very fascinating. I listened to Legendary Upside with Pat Crane again, the guy who won a historic best ball amount, almost won the $1 million. So he knows best ball. It's part of his gimmick and part of his podcast stream. They were having an interesting discussion, and the question was, if you were, and this will be interesting because Evan's not a big believer in stacking. So they were having this discussion. If you believed in an offense and you had to stack a offense, how many players would be too many players to have on a team? So how many players would you stack if you were going to stack your maximum amount?
It depends on the roster size.
Best ball. So you got 20 like a normal 20 round like
Correct.
pick.
Yeah, so the most I think I'd be willing to go is 3.
That's what I thought you
probably my number 2.
I don't like overstacking because when they have a bad game, you're fucked.
Okay, so we do agree. So I said 3, right? Assuming they were going to say like 4 because they're more risk takers. They were arguing that sometimes they'd stack 5 people, including the quarterback. I'm like, oh, that's a lot, man.
Yeah.
That's a lot. So we are seeing, we talked a little bit at the beginning of this discussion about different strategies. So we are seeing people trying different things for sure in these draft leagues. With that being said, though, I'm going to get us out of here. This was a good show. I enjoyed it a lot. Hopefully, Donnie will be able to join us next week. Good night, guys.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.
Peace out, everyone.